Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be talking about this crazy story coming out of Kingdom 524, where the leadership team just up and left on day 2 due to there being a lack of whales and a lack of general activity, is what supposedly has been stated. Now, some details on this is that the number one alliance here was the jump project. From what has been stated is they were a one alliance jump, and not everyone left, but a number of people did leave, including members of leadership and non-leadership alike. They apparently assessed and had sent some early mails. I did reach out to the person. I think Vade was the one who ended up informing me on Discord when I saw the post. We're going to be showing you that as well and just kind of talking about this. Now, I'm imagining maybe this is them. They did say they're the current leader, unless maybe that has changed. But yeah, it is interesting for why did this happen, and is this something that can or is likely to happen? Because if you have a jump project that's going into a kingdom, they're doing an early assessment on, well, is this kingdom going to be one that we want to stay in, depending on how much growth we're seeing, how much general player activity we're seeing, and is anyone spending money and really powering up? I mean, strongest person here, I mean, they're probably, this is the 13th newest kingdom. So the newest kingdom right now is 537. This is 524. And so you could say they're about 3 weeks old. And top player is 7.6 million. And then top alliance, right, 272. Now, 20 days in, maybe you could say this is a little lower on average. I don't think that it's awful, but is it a little bit lower on average? Sure. However, there's two sides here. Let's talk about the first one, which is you decide and opt in. Then we're going to show you some screenshots and some messages as well from Vade on the official Discord. Number one, if you are a jump project and you're going into a kingdom and you really want to ensure that the kingdom is going to have good activity, respectfully, you probably shouldn't be going in with just one alliance worth. However, number two, if that is something that you really want to focus on, the challenge is you also have to keep in mind is that if you're going with a jump project, not everyone is probably going to want to consistently jump with you if you opt to then leave. And just because there's not a lot of good activity and there's not any presence of whales or people that are spending a decent amount of money, because each time you jump, you always have the opportunity for less people to go with you because some players just may want to start playing. So that's why it's really important that when you start your jump, you are doing it with the intent where the highest percentage chance is you starting in the first kingdom that you end up going to, right? Albeit something crazy, of course. But if you're just basically going to be doing the Frogger hop back and forth until you end up finding a kingdom, you just have to make sure you have a really consistent core with you that doesn't mind, even if you have to restart 5 or 6 times, right? It's almost kind of like starting a bunch of new accounts and then opening up a bunch of gold chests early on, and then you only playing that account if you get certain heroes, right? It's kind of like you're trying to min-max your start. It's just, I don't know if it's the most efficient way to go about it. It would be a lot easier just to have a larger project, a lot more players, where you're able to supplement the activity in that way instead of relying on it organically. Even though it can happen, it may not always happen. Okay, so now let's go over and read off some messages here from Discord. So this one was, I know we're going to start here on this one here from Vade. So this one up here reads, so I started on a new server and leadership quit on the first day because not enough whales. Now they didn't transfer leadership correctly. And our alliance is still top 1 on the server, again, which we showed. And then we fast forward to here, right, where this one was from, I think, November 10th, right? So that one was, this is a week later, we see the post. So I started on a new server and stumbled into being R5 of the biggest alliance. And this was, right, so I guess, what, 11 days ago? So maybe they're still not the lead. Since the leadership left there early because there are no whales on the server or something, like that was their reason. Now my question is, how does this usually go? Any chance of uniting the whole kingdom without fighting? Because my idea would just be to merge alliances peacefully as we go along, do objectives together, as it will be a challenge for most alliances anyways. There are some alliances who have 60% of our power, but we are clearly the top alliance on the server. So I guess the other part of this, before we maybe touch on those, and then I want to read a little bit more because there are some people that chimed in going back and forth with Vade, is it somewhat does suck to a degree, because when you have leadership that will leave that early on, especially as the top alliance, that can also demoralize. That can demotivate some people. That can make people unsure on the alliance's future and maybe their future within the kingdom. And it also will have some negative psychological impacts to players. If they're new, well, they're susceptible to a lot more because they haven't experienced enough in-game to really be able to filter out what is and is not something healthy to focus on, right? Or the healthy versus unhealthy. And in these cases, an example of that could be the unhealthy is, oh, well, why did my leadership team leave? If they're quoting this or they're sending out mails, do I need to be here? Should I leave too? Right? Oh, this is all of a sudden it's too much. Maybe I should just not even play. I didn't realize there was so much going on in this game. Who knows what someone is thinking? On the other side, if you do have a little bit more, if you're taking kind of the healthier approach, you could just say, okay, well, people are still playing here. There's obviously not some kind of like mass exodus of people leaving. Let me go ahead and play this out a little bit longer and see how things go. And so now let's get to a little bit of the conversation here on what actually, so someone promised, so no one's going to attack your alliance unless top 2 and 3 hate you and unite the server or make allies. I mean, this is more or less somewhat accurate, right? I mean, ideally, if you're starting off in a new kingdom, usually you're not going to end up having people that are going to go against you unless you're some kind of tyrants. You're not willing to work with people. Maybe you're just taking the mine approach, but you don't have the power to back it up. And so oftentimes, especially even in kingdoms that maybe don't have a high level of activity or a lot of power or any early whales or heavy spenders or mid to high spenders, the chances of that happening where they're going to just kind of wreak havoc on the number one alliance is a little bit low percentage. So the next one was find good diplomats to help you. Just good R4s in general. Pass leadership to someone who has experience. I mean, again, unless you want to gain some experience for yourself, I mean, it also depends on who's going to be stepping up. I think Vade had mentioned something about him being nominated. Someone had said set mock wars, right? He says, I think with Commander so far we did well on objectives. My philosophy is just focus and grow to help others for now, as they potentially will end up with our alliance anyways, avoid fights and merge peacefully. I mean, again, I think that's an okay approach for one style. No need for real war. Keep spending high and players engage. Isn't KVK there for that? I don't see much point to fight inside your home kingdom. So I think this is response to like the set mock wars. And Finks does have a point. I mean, this is something that even I talk about when you're doing jump projects and or just when you're in a kingdom or your home kingdom phase for season 1, is that it is good to do mock wars because players need to have some kind of realistic approach of simulating what it will be like to go out there and fighting KVKs. In addition, it can also be good for a home kingdom if you're trying to do some homework, right? Like an example would be doing watch parties. So this was something that I've done in some projects where if we knew that wars were going to be happening, we would organize a watch party and we would just ping we'd say, hey, if everyone, we would try to do it on a day where people can be on, and we wouldn't ask a lot of everyone. We would say, hey, if you can just give us maybe 20 to 30 minutes, right, or 30 minutes or so of time, and if you could stay longer, great, but we're just asking for, around 30 minutes. And we would basically go and scan and scout out kingdoms, and whenever the passes were going to open or if we knew big wars were going to happen, and we would then say, hey, let's everyone get on at this time because this is when the fighting will probably start, not obviously right when the pass opens, but we would look for kingdoms that we know where there's going to be a lot of PvP and KVK, and then we would say, hey, everyone get on, give us about 30 minutes, and then we would all watch, and then the people who had a little bit more fighting experience would be kind of giving some color commentary, right, and kind of live analysis, explanations while the fighting is going on. So that way, you do something like that, you can record that, have that be a VOD, so that way anyone can access that, and you can use that as good referencing material for when you go and do mock wars in your home kingdom. And you can do anything from doing kind of 10v10s, you want to do one alliance versus one alliance, you want to do kind of rally garrisons. I mean, there's a number of things that you can do, and all of those are really to help you prep for when KVK comes. Because I'll tell you right now, the one thing that is going to help kingdoms and that will help kingdoms get the most amount of participation and engagement is when players are feeling comfortable and confident in knowing what to do and how to execute those things. Next one here is going to be, where do we have here? I don't see here for that. Oh yeah, the point is don't create a bunch of weaklings when KVK starts. Most struggle to do objectives. I think it would just be counterproductive and lead to agonizing people who wants to join an alliance they lost the war to. I mean, I guess it just depends on how many. If he's talking home kingdom, people joining an alliance. I mean, I guess it just depends if there's war there. And now if you're saying, is there war in the home kingdom, and you basically have two sides, if you're saying, well, the losing side may not want or be interested in joining the winning side, I mean, that might be true for some people, but in my experience, oftentimes players are okay with switching sides, especially if it means that they can progress further in the home kingdom and be a part of active alliances, whether or not they spend, but just being a part of an active and engaged and socially active alliance. The dramaticless people, something Bergen said. The server already struggles with activity. People leaving is very bad. I would imagine so, especially if this was early on when that was happening and the people left, even though this was probably about a week later from what we ended up seeing. Let's see here. We have, that is nonsense. We have an objective to take care of almost every day. It says no war equals no activity. I mean, I don't think that that's really accurate, because before a kingdom builder is a war game, it is a city building game. Like when you get in and you start playing, usually you're not going to be seeing immediate war happening on day one. Sure, it can happen, but that's not usually the average. And so what does every player in a kingdom have to do? Well, they have to level up their account. So you are building your city, and your initial primary objective is to get to max level, is to get to max buildings, max tech, T5, max VIP. These are your personal first and foremost objectives that you have to hit before anything else comes up. And that will always be a constant as well, because until you reach that, you'll always be working towards that. And so oftentimes it's really just about kind of setting the appropriate perspective and headspace for players that are in your kingdom to understand what their primary objectives are, and then what their secondary, and I almost like to say tertiary, but what your third and fourth and so on objectives will be afterwards. So then we end up getting, I think, with mock wars, invade, what do we have? Taking passes, doing elite rates, helping others with their stuff is plenty. Okay, I guess we just a different philosophy. I don't expect players to play 24/7. It says only with leadership that's bad and can't keep things competitive, make it highly rewarding. Someone said they last less than a day and are worse. Well, either way, you had bad leadership teams or an active server, which happens every KVK. If you want to go casual, it's up to you. But to create a strong server, that's the way. I mean, again, it is. I guess overall it does really suck. He says, also, I don't agree with that. I prefer to grow as a community to strengthen the kingdom's sense of togetherness. And again, I do think that's a good approach. I think first and foremost, the idea being is that if you're going to reduce the amount of overall player drop-off and you want to keep retention high, then you need to be inclusive, and you have to start thinking kingdom-wide instead of alliance-wide, right? So you have to think about all this and not just this, especially if you want to keep a kingdom as healthy as possible, and you also want to create opportunities to potentially funnel players in to certain alliances, or grab people that are maybe at the bottom of the barrel that either just don't know that they can move, maybe they don't have a home and they're out of an alliance, and you're trying to put them in a position to where they can start getting involved within a social group and hopefully an active alliance at that point. So let's see, I think that might be it from here. Oh yeah, this is where I commented. And then I said, hey, I might do a video on this. He's like, yeah, we appreciate it. Like I said, I thought it was a really good topic. Let me see if there's anything else here. Probably not. Yeah, I don't think there was anything else. So that's probably it. Anyways, again, overall, to me, it's fascinating because there's a number of reasons on why people. I mean, I used to see people in Rock that would basically do this, where they would jump hop kingdoms and they would go in, they'd wait. Now, sometimes you will let me finish that thought. They'll go in, they'll wait to see how the kingdom is progressing, and they'll give it a day or two, maybe 3 days most, and then they'll potentially pull the plug and say, okay, we're going to go ahead and reset and go. Other times, people will go into kingdoms and make sure that there are no other kind of early whales or early spenders, and then they'll potentially stay there because of that. And so there's kind of two approaches to it, right? It's like usually if you have a bigger group, the one thing you're worried about is having big early spenders And then you kind of get into the advanced tactics of, if you have multiple groups going, sometimes people will have delayed spending to almost psych out or to trick the other side or the other group into thinking that they're going to be stronger, everything's okay. And sometimes you'll see rogue players or rogue groups that will do that as a way to ensure that they're going to be having a lot of fodder or food for them to go and harvest, if you will. I could do a whole video on this, on just the subtle kind of advanced tactics and psychological warfare that goes into things you have to consider when you're kind of doing the jumper approach and going into a new kingdom, whether it's 1 alliance, 6, 9 alliances, and things that you have to be able to look out for to identify, at least with the highest percentage chance that these kingdoms could be a good landing spot. Anyways, with all that being said, I would love to know from you, have you ever been a part of a group or a project that has gone into a kingdom and, for whatever reason it was, opted to leave the kingdom and go into a new kingdom? Or, and again, I'd love to hear and what the reason is. And then also, if you're someone who has been a part of an alliance, you opted to stay in the kingdom, maybe you were the number 1 alliance, number 2 alliance in a kingdom, and then you had people leave, what did you do? Were you able to salvage? Were other people able to salvage because maybe you were a member and not a part of leadership? And then were they able to recover? I'd love to hear. So let me know in the comments down below. That's going to be it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.